The Summer Birds by Penelope Farmer. Part 2, 6. One night, when the rain had been coming down for nearly 2.5 weeks, Charlotte suddenly woke from an unremembered dream. She was not sure that the waking was not itself a dream, as she peered sleepy-eyed through black shadow and silver moonlight, which seemed no more real than the blurring swiftness of the dream. It took her several minutes to realize that there was a full moon staring coldly from a sky without cover. She leapt out of bed and onto the cold linoleum and went to the window to look at it. Only then did she see it was not by chance and moonlight that she had wakened. Something, no, someone, was banging at the window pane. She shrank back, seeing there a white oval shape. Was it a ghost? Was it a burglar? Miss Gosling had told terrible tales of both. Charlotte shivered desperately, wondering where the poker was, for that was always Miss Gosling's weapon against any intruder, or so she said. Then a voice called softly, "Don't be silly, Char. Don't be silly, Char. It's only me." And the white shape took sudden form and face, and she saw that it was the boy, and behind him another shape appeared in the moonlight, Maggot. Charlotte rushed to open the window wider to let them in. When Emma, who had remained fast asleep, woke up, it was to see the three of them conferring under the window conspiratorially. "Whoever's that?" she cried, afraid, thinking she was still dreaming. "Only us," they said. "Look at the lovely night. We're going out now, all of us. It's much too good to waste asleep after so much rain." But Emma, who read school stories, said, "We must have a picnic, a proper midnight feast." "That's an idea," they said, so they crept in single line down the stairs to find provisions. There was little in the larder at the bottom of the stone basement stairs. Miss Gosling was too lazy to be a storer of pies or bottled fruits, or to need many ingredients for cooking, but there was a row of bright-labeled cans on the white shelves lining the walls. Emma said, "Let's have baked beans, they're lovely cold." So they took one of these, and a can opener, luckily. Then they found an open box of sugar lumps, and some apples, and tomatoes in a basket. Finally, they seized an enormous box of chocolate cookies. "They must be Miss Gosling's," said Emma, giggling. "She never gives any to us. We'd better call her Miss Gosling." And these they removed without conscience or care, though before they had tried not to make their taking too obvious. But Charlotte had a faint twinge of shame about Miss Gosling, thinking how kind she could be and how terrible to have so many chins. At last, clasping their loot, they were out in the moonlight. The sisters had leaped from their bedroom above ivied walls, pretending they were fearless as Maggot or the boy. But they were not. Charlotte poised, had a moment of terror, and knew that Emma too was afraid of this open leap into the night. But now it was over. They flew joyously toward the village. Their horizon was sky, the evening star, cold and white, alone in it but for moonlight. And below, the blackness of sky, the deeper black that was the downs, and on them more stars, but human yellow ones. They dropped down to the village, down to the trees, until the horizon was more black hill than moon-black sky. They went around the village in the moonlight, and their four faces at the windows woke all the children except baby Fumpkins, who slept too soundly. Out they came, sleepy-eyed, hair on end, day clothes pulled on over night clothes, to see the glad, cold moonlight where rain had been before. "Caw," they said, or were silent according to their kind. Jammy and Scooter shadow chased. "Didn't know the moon gave you shadows too," they said, and chased them up and down in the air and on the ground, shouting at the freedom of it after the weary days indoors. They flew together into the black woods, where the moonlight came, if at all, in strips and angles, and the dark was very dark, and thence out onto the downs, the full moonlit downs, where the gorse flowers were silver instead of yellow, and the thyme, close to the earth, as cold and gray, looked its hard iron tang of a taste. Let's read that sentence again. They flew together into the black woods, where the moonlight came, if at all, in strips and angles, and the dark was very dark, and thence out onto the downs, the full moonlit downs, where the gorse flowers were silver instead of yellow, and the time close to the earth as cold and gray looked its hard iron tang of a taste. That is a very strange and very long sentence. They were glad of Emma's beans now, of the tomatoes, the apples, and the chocolate cookies. They ate the beans from the can, which was difficult without spoons. They had to scoop them out with their fingers, each child in turn, and afterwards wipe their hands clean on the cold turf. Then they gorged on fruit and sugar lumps and chocolate cookies. Charlotte, the rough, sweet grit of a sugar lump against her tongue, said aloud, "It must be summer now." "Yes," they all agreed, suddenly grave. "It must be summer now." "Or else it will be school again soon," she went on. "September, chestnuts, frost, not flying weather." They didn't like to think what could happen then. And the boys, in fear perhaps, went mad as if the moonlight had the same effect on them as March is supposed to have on hares. "Bet you can't do this or that or the other," they wagered each other proudly, and became wilder and wilder in their boasts. Suddenly they were drawing up sides for some sport or other, boys against boys. "Jammy, you come here with me," said the boy to the smallest member of the school. Simultaneously, Toddy cried loudly, "Jammy's with me, over here, Jammy." The little boy wavered between them. He turned to the boy, then to Toddy. Next, he looked beseechingly at Charlotte, but she could only give him in pity another lump of sugar. He put his stubby hands into his stubby hair and rubbed it on end. "Who called me?" he asked, hopeful that someone else would decide for him. "Me," said Toddy and the boy together. Jammy glanced from one to the other. He made his decision. Sticking his chin into the air, he marched deliberately over and took his place beside the boy. "I'm Faria," he announced gravely. "Jammy," said Toddy slowly, "I chose you, not him. Are you coming?" "But I," said the boy, stepping between Toddy and Jammy, "I chose him for myself. He's mine, not yours." "Who says?" asked Toddy, spectacled and truculent. "I do," said the boy. "Who's you?" "Me," said the boy, calmly glinting. I said who's you," said Toddy dangerously. "I, if you'd rather," came the boy's reply. Toddy exploded. "Who's you, I said? And you won't say? You can't say, that's what I think. See? You're just an upstart, you are. Where do you come from? What are you doing here? That's what I want to know. I don't believe you come from anywhere," he shouted fiercely into the boy's face. "Anywhere, anywhere, anywhere!" And he threw himself onto the boy, which was brave because he was much smaller and not as good at fighting not as good a fighter as Ginger was. They were rolling over on the moonlit grass, the boy all claw like a furious bird, holding no strength back. Charlotte thought she could throw herself down to stop them, but thinking of it and watching them lash about, she was not brave enough. The children stood in a little circle, watching, alarmed but excited. There was pride in Jammy's stiffened back now that his part was finished. Never in his life before had he been the cause of a fight, and such a good fight at that, for Toddy was inspired. But Maggot stepped forward and surveyed them scornfully. "Stop that," she said, her voice low. It seemed unlikely in that frenzy they could have heard such an order, yet there was maybe a small lull in the fighting, a very slight hesitation. "Stop that," she said again, a little louder, and this time the movement almost ceased. "You two stop it," Maggot got a third time, her voice lower again, and at last the arms and legs stopped flailing altogether, and the two faces surfaced among them. Toddy's flushed and spectacleist, a black eye appearing, the boy unmarked, though the shell freckles stood out on his cheeks like the hackles of a dog. "What was that for?" said Maggot shortly. "Silly idiots! What's the point of fighting on a night like this?" But none of Toddy's wrath seemed abated by the struggle. "It's him!" he said with a jerk of his head at the boy, as he had seen his father jerk his head at the people he disliked. "And what of him?" asked Maggot, and all the children waited for an answer. "He came here," said Toddy. "He bosses us all, me, Ginger, like all the girls." That's our fault if we let him boss us, not his, cried Charlotte hotly, forgetting to be shy in the boy's defense. Toddy looked at her witheringly. Huh, you're soft on him. That's not what I mean anyway. Who is he? We don't know. He don't say. We don't ask. And what's his magic? He went on hushed. It might be bad magic for all we know. Which sort of magic? And he paused to let them imagine cauldrons and evil spirits. They looked at the boy odd. Surely he couldn't be someone of this sort, the friendly boy who had taught them to fly. Yet he was very strange, and they knew nothing of his beginnings. I say he should tell us, went on Toddy, seeing the effect his words had had on them, especially in this cool moonlight on the open downs. Tell us what he is, then he can boss us if it's something good. What do you say, all of you? He finished, looking around at them standing in a circle. Ginger, no longer pretending leadership, now that leadership had to be explained, stood behind him, half nodding his red head, but with some doubt, which was unusual in this unquestioning friend of Toddy's. The others looked at one another, wondering if Toddy might be right, but they wanted mainly to fly. They did not want difficulties such as this one. Jammy and Scooter alone were careless, turning somersaults on the grass. And that's the end of Chapter 6.